Welcome to Evangelical-ish, where we discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly of the American Evangelical Church, deconstruction, faith, and God's love through it all. Join us for these episodes live on our Evangelical-ish YouTube page on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central, and 6 o'clock Pacific. Let's journey together.
And 7 o'clock Mountain, not to leave out our mountain friends. Hi, everybody. Paul and April with you tonight in the Evangelical-ish crew, and we're missing Jeremy tonight.
Yeah,
what a bummer.
Yeah, he had to back out last minute, had a sick kid, and his wife's out of town, so told him, take care of your kid. Some things are more important than live streaming, but very few things.
Something more important than Evangelical-ish? How can it be? Yes, and we tried to get some fill-ins, but for various reasons it didn't work out. So.
Yeah, we were giving like, hey, I know the show's in 15 minutes, so yeah, very last minute.
Well, we can be interactive with the crowd tonight, and I will be proud to carry on with the show with you tonight, April LaJoy, because we've got good topics and lots of stuff. Is it hot where you are? Because it is freaking hot where we are today.
It's definitely hot. Today was a little bit cooler though, so I mean, by cooler, I mean like 90, but it felt better than being in the high 90s or 100s. Aubrey asked if I still have perfect attendance, and I do still have perfect attendance to the show. So let the record show.
Listen totally to how proud you are.
I know. I'm like such a nerd in every way.
We used to get awards for like perfect attendance in Sunday school and stuff, and now that's like forbidden. You don't, now it's like, do not come if you're sick. The world has changed.
It definitely has changed. So towards the end of this episode, we are going to talk about church camp stories. So if you guys who are here live have any church camp stories, be thinking of them, and then you can put them in the chat later, and we'll all commiserate together.
Yeah, sounds good. Lori says 106 in Dallas today. It was only 99 in Fresno today. It gets very hot here in July and August. And so 99, and since we really do have no humidity here at all, 99 is not too bad. So piece of cake. 99.
Yeah, dry heat's so much better. When you get that humidity, whew, so sweaty.
Oh, and particularly since I've lived out here for decades now, whenever I go to the Midwest or the South, I just die. I can't deal with that humidity anymore.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. I just went to was that yesterday? Gosh, it was yesterday morning. I tried out a parkour class, but it was in like a warehouse that doesn't have like AC. It's just like fans. It was so hot, and I'm so sore. I have not been this sore in probably years. I feel so old. And the funny thing about parkour is it doesn't look hard. Like when you watch people doing it, you're like, oh, that's not hard. They're just hopping through things. It is so hard.
That's the whole point, right?
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm very sore tonight on top of being hot.
Why is the only thing that I can hear in my head right now is Michael Scott yelling, parkour!
I know, that's the only thing I thought of. No one yelled it in the class. I was really disappointed. I wanted someone to be like, parkour! No one yelled it. We were all just surviving the class.
And yes, Mandy, we all hate you because it's 79 in Portland today. So.
Oh, that does sound nice.
Eesh, ugly. All right. Well, lots of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, so much stuff.
By the way, like I did my personal podcast, Post Evangelical podcast. I did a podcast with a witch in our last podcast, and I've been posting clips. And wow, Christians lose their shit about witches. I mean, they lose their shit about everything, but they really lose their shit about witches. And then when I say, well, isn't prayer witchcraft? Like, isn't prayer trying to use a mystical force to change something in the natural? They really lose their shit when I say that.
Well, and like the whole name it and claim it theology is basically manifestation when it comes like in witchcraft. It's the same thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna put out my desires to the universe and have it come back to me. What is the difference between that and casting your bread upon the water?
I don't
I
know.
mean, at its heart, Christianity is a mystical process, right? Some guy got executed 2,000 years ago. Well, some guy, I'm sorry. Jesus was executed 2,000 years ago, and somehow that frees me from all sin punishment. That is a mystical, witchy process, isn't it?
Mm, yeah.
We just don't put those terms on it.
I mean, Bethel is so witchy.
Yeah.
They straight up do weird practices that would be considered witchcraft in any other sense of it.
Does it make you uncomfortable? I guess for me, it makes me a little uncomfortable to talk about the gospel that way. But like, it is a blood sacrifice took place. First, it was animals, and then a human was sacrificed to take their place. A human, apparently, with God inhabiting. And if you say a magic incantation, you
Mm,
are then made whole and sinless by that incantation over towards that blood sacrifice.
mm.
When you say it like that, it's a pretty witchy process.
There really is so much crossover though between Christianity and witchcraft. It's just different language. A lot of the
Mhm.
practices are the same, just different languages or
When I
different words.
when I do yoga or meditation and it's listening to what's going on inside of me, it is exactly the same as the hearing God exercises I did in evangelicalism. Exactly the
Wow.
same. What I hear inside of me is exactly the same feeling and process. I don't know. I'm really in this place of like, we were terrified of the new age, particularly in my
Mhm.
childhood. Oh, new age is going to get us. Psychology is going to get us. And now I think, wow, we just had so much stolen from us in
Yeah.
those eh, eh, by by things that happen to match what we see in our Bible very, very closely. So it's just pretty crazy. Anyway, sorry to
Well,
take us on that
well, no, I was
sidebite.
just even just all the satanic panic and things like what people are saying in the chat, Harry Potter and Pokemon. I remember that being a big debacle when I was a kid.
Teletubbies.
Teletubbies. Did you hear? Okay, did you hear this in your circles that the purple Teletubby was gay?
Oh, Jerry Falwell was all out there saying that he was gay. I can't remember
I
what the name was.
I I can't remember why, like, the reason that the purple Teletubby was gay, and I remember watching Teletubbies as a kid trying to figure it out because I heard the rumor and I was like, "He just looks like a Teletubby to me."
Well, they had a purse, right? I'm going to assume that Teletubby has the pronouns they, them, and they
Mm.
had a purse, right?
I didn't ever really assign gender to any of them. Like, they
There was
were
one of
like,
the Teletubbies that had a purse.
was that the the purple one?
And I think that's why Jerry Falwell said,
Maybe it was a man purse.
a merce.
A merce.
Oh, so funny.
Oh
Yeah,
gosh.
and our kids, we didn't let our kids watch Harry Potter either, which is very embarrassing me and they kill me for it on a regular basis that Harry Potter was satanic and so yeah, we did that to our kids too.
Well, I sympathize with your kids because I was also not allowed to watch or read Harry Potter. And when I asked, they're like, oh, because it's Antichrist. There was some article in Charisma magazine of them saying that some kid read the books and afterwards was like, I hate Jesus, mommy. Like, something that definitely did not happen, but it was enough to send all the evangelicals into a little frenzy. And I remember I was invited to my best friend's 16th birthday party, and she was also a Christian. I knew her from my Christian school, but she loved Harry Potter, and her parents let her watch Harry Potter. So for her birthday, she was going to see the new Harry Potter movie, like dinner and then Harry Potter. And I was only allowed to go for the dinner, and I had to leave because I couldn't watch the movie, and it was super embarrassing.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Oh my gosh.
yes.
When my I remember when my daughter was reading the Hunger Games books I
Mm.
was even in that, I was a little bit like, "What are we reading here?" But, so
That
I
wasn't
it
even that long ago, Paul.
no, it was not that long
Like
ago.
10 years ago? I
But
guess
then we
that is a long time.
went and saw the movies. Now, wait, I have to if we're talking about man purses, I gotta show everybody let everybody in. So I just bought some boots.
Mm.
Is that an
Those are
awesome
amazing.
is that
I love
awesome?
those.
Like, this is my Prince boot, and I
Destroy those
I'm
gender norms.
I'm gonna destroy some gender norms with clothing here in
Mhm.
the coming days, and so those just came on my porch right before the show, so I'm
Well, for those listening who can't see, Paul just held up some fabulous black boots with a bit of a heel on them, but they look great.
I call them my Prince boots because
Prince boots, I like
Prince
it.
was like 5 feet tall, so he wore very, very tall boots to try to
I could
give
see that.
himself some. All right, kick us into our first topic.
Okay, so we have obviously all, you know, come a long way, and we talk about this a lot. And so we were kind of I think it just kind of came up organically in our conversation in a meeting earlier this week of what our younger selves, our evangelical former selves would say to us now if we were to either go back in time or they saw into the future and saw us and what we're doing now, what would they say to us? What would we say to them? And we're like, oh, this is an interesting topic. So I don't know, Paul, what do you think if you were to go back? And I guess it would depend on different stages of our evangelical selves too, because there were times I was more dogmatic than others. But what do you think? How far back would you have to go to where you were really evangelical?
Well, apparently not that far. Like, the first thing I would tell my evangelical self today is let your kids watch fucking Harry Potter. They're not.
Oh, but would your old evangelical self cringe at the F word, or were you cool about
Oh,
it?
yes. Although I was always a bit of a cusser. I was always a bit of a rebel, and
You're
I
ahead of
used to
me in
even
that.
say as a pastor, and it used to make people very angry in my church. I would say a swear word a day keeps religious demons away. So
Mm.
I would say crap from the pulpit a lot because I couldn't say shit.
Oh, so you're
Uh,
progressive a little bit
yeah,
in some
but
ways.
crap. So yeah, I think the number one thing, well, two things that I cringe about that I would talk to myself if I could sit with my old evangelical self. The number one thing I would say is, Paul, when you take someone out for coffee, do it for relationship, not to get a notch in the belt. Do
Mm,
not go with an agenda. Do not go with the explicit goal of getting them saved. First off,
mm,
they're going to see right through it. Secondly, it's a great way to lose relationship with people. And thirdly, it's not what Jesus did with people. If you see in the Bible, Jesus didn't, at least there's nothing in the text that said Jesus went and shared, Zacchaeus, have you accepted me as your personal Lord and Savior?
mm.
That didn't happen. Just being in relationship with Jesus impacted Zacchaeus in a positive way. So I would say, Paul, turn off the Christian agenda, quit trying to close the sale,
Mm,
just be in relationship with people. And if the Jesus in you is attractive to others, it will draw them to the gospel. So anyway, I think I just cringe when I think of the times I took somebody out with an agenda to get them saved.
do you think your old self would invite you out for coffee?
Absolutely. Oh, oh, and you know the thing, I have family members still that are like inviting me to men's prayer breakfasts and sending me Bible verses and doing exactly the thing we used to do to try to get people saved that we were worried were falling away. And it feels so
Mm,
grimy. It makes me feel so yuck because A, I feel like I'm being manipulated by the person sending it to me, and B, I used to do the same thing and I just
mm.
want to go back and beat that person up. That was me that used to do that.
Yeah. I just think about too. I mean, I was pretty much most of my friends were Christians because I went to Christian schools and church and stuff. But there were a couple years that I, went to a public school, or, not everyone at the Christian school was Christian. And like the guilt that I constantly felt when I had friends that were not Christians, that they weren't Christians yet. And like it was my, and that like if I didn't witness or share the gospel in a certain way, or if I missed an opportunity, like the way I would kick myself that night and think that like God was so disappointed in me. And then like now looking back, realizing how strained these relationships were, because I always had that in the back of my head that like, because I was taught if an unbeliever comes in contact with a believer and that person does not share the gospel of Christ with them, that their blood's on like going to be on my hands. If they go to hell, that's on me. And like that is a lot of pressure to carry around as a kid. Like I remember being like 6 telling like my kid's neighbor like, "Oh, if you don't accept Jesus, you're going to go to hell." Like the idea that like I was a kid being terrified of hell and being scared that my friends are going to go to hell, that's just a lot. And obviously that's going to carry into your teens and your college years and adulthood, and it's just not a genuine way to build relationships.
Were you told in youth group, etc., the old thing about if you're ashamed of Jesus before men, he'll be ashamed of you before the Father?
Oh yeah. That was usually right before a big altar call. They're like, "Come right now before all your peers. Come up here and say, 'I am not ashamed.' Right now, the count of 3." And then people just run up. It was like a race. Whoever got there was the holiest first.
Yeah, I mean that really like it disturbs my heart to think of youth pastors doing that to our children.
Yeah.
And that idea of you not, again, it for me it really was, we were really taught sales tactics for sharing the gospel and going for the close. And well, I mean they didn't call it that, but that's what it was. This is how you close it out. First you broach the subject through telling your story, and then you ask the question, if you stood before Jesus tonight at the pearly gates, what would you use to make your case of whether you get into heaven or not? And then the close, would you like to say that prayer right now?
Mm.
And then there was always this part in there that I always was struggled with a little bit, like you have to convince them that they're not happy. You have to convince them that their life is not good because they don't have Jesus in it. And
Right.
oh yes, I would love to go back and just tackle myself to keep me from having those conversations with people.
Oh man, there's like at different stages, I feel like it would be a different conversation with former me. Like me and maybe like senior of high school for like a few years in college was like so gun ho for Jesus, gung ho. Um,
Gung ho,
and
that's right.
I know. I mean, so I was always a diehard Christian, was um love Jesus. I still love Jesus. But was definitely pretty dogmatic and political. So as I grew, and honestly, the more I learned about politics and the more Republican I became, the more dogmatic I became in my theology as well. Ironically, they kind of went hand in hand. Um, but there was a season in my life when I was like a teenager, like really before I could drive, before I had like a little bit of freedom to kind of do my own thing, that I was like really going through some hormones and some changes and felt really trapped in my household, because like my parents were really loving and for the most part like chill about some things, but like I was not allowed to date. My dad was very strict on me, and there was a lot of purity culture things placed on me. And I just remember feeling so guilty all the time because I remember like lay in bed and think about how awesome it would be to have sex one day, and then feeling so guilty that I was thinking about having sex. And I was like maybe 15, but like having hormones. And I remember my dad would always like kind of threaten me with a good time because he'd be like, "April, You want to make sure that you're always living right for God, because the devil is going to try to mess you up and send a guy your way that's just going to take you down the wrong path. And I actually remember like thinking in my head, like, oh, please, devil, like, please send a guy my way. Like, I wanted to kiss a guy so bad. Like, and so like if I went back to her and she saw that I was living in this freedom, of course I'm married now, she'd be like, "Oh, how's sex?" But I think I could have a good conversation with her, and she'd be so relieved that we got to be free one day, like free of all the rules and the laws and the purity culture. And it was a lot of pressure being a pastor's kid, an evangelist kid, where my dad talked about my purity from the pulpit, and like that I was
Oh,
a virgin, like in a bragging way.
oh my
Um,
goodness.
and like I never thought about it in the moment, like how much I didn't like that, because he did it in like because he was so proud of me and all this stuff. But I was like, oh, but like in my heart, like I just felt like I was putting on this like really good girl portrayal, which I was a good girl. I wasn't doing anything quote unquote bad, but I just wanted out so bad. Like I love Jesus, but I felt like I was I don't know, just so ashamed. And then also, if my former me, especially like in high school and college, found out that I'm just like bisexual and married to a non-binary person, openly bisexual, even though it's not like I'm still monogamous with my
Right,
partner,
right.
but
Good
like old
caveat.
yeah, but old me would be like, "Oh, well that makes so much sense. That's why that's why you like women sometimes, even though you don't you can convince yourself that you're straight." It's like, "Oh, we can just say we're that's fine." Oh, it would be a wild conversation.
Isn't it? And it's interesting that it takes this turn of like now, and I'm doing a lot of therapy these days, and this going back and comforting that inner child, comforting that part of me that got injured along the way is such a big thing. And that now we're thinking, let's go back and tell ourselves the truth. Let
Mhm.
that you were trying so hard to be pure and right and good, and your religious community told you not good enough. And
Mhm.
it just made us live in such shame. I was going to put a quote up here that Abigail said. Where did it go? I love this. Abigail says, "I just want to take myself and show myself the authentic love of Jesus. I had such a fake, superficial faith. I want to show young Abby who God really is." Wow, I love
Mm.
that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be such a huge thing, because there was always so much cognitive dissonance in my faith when I was super evangelical. Like I didn't recognize it. I was not self-aware,
Right.
but it was just very confusing to be taught that your faith is only based on God's grace, that there's nothing you can do that will keep you from the love of God. And you hear that in one sentence, and then the very next sentence it's like, but also make sure you never have sex, don't drink alcohol, don't masturbate, don't, and like all these list of rules that were added, and or even like dumb rules like, girls, don't show your shoulders, don't show your bra straps, make sure you're fully covered, make sure your shorts are knee length. Why? Because guys are going to always sexualize you all of the time. Like to this day, even though I've deconstructed and unlearned a lot of like purity culture stuff, like it's still hard for me to have friendships with men of
Mhm.
because I've always been taught that men will sexualize me no matter what. And so that audit, like I still, and hugs too. Like you're
Yeah.
gonna show a TikTok here in a little bit of a hug situation, but I can't hug men because I'm in my head, it's like they're gonna think of my boobs. If they brush my boobs, they're gonna think of my boobs, and then I'm gonna cause them to stumble. And even though I know all of these things to be like bullshit, it's still like it's still in there no matter how much I try to unlearn it and to convince myself that I'm not a sexual being and that I'm more than my body. That when that's ingrained in you from a child, it's hard to exercise.
Yeah. It is, and that stuff is not only ingrained in the church, it's ingrained in our culture. Like, now that's changing outside the church a lot faster than inside, but it's still
Mhm.
there, and there's
Yeah.
still I love it when people say if just use the Christian terms of if you have a baby out of wedlock, and I'm just like, if you
Mhm.
use the term wedlock, you got a problem. Like, let's just get rid of the term wedlock altogether, because it just shows you're a wonderful King James version of the Bible follower.
Mm.
Yet, yep, the Bible has all these sexy stories in it and all these things, and so if I were to have the non-critical conversation with myself as an evangelical, I just noticed my camera is like a little tilted. Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, you're
I
good.
would say they're wrong. You don't deserve to be ashamed. You're not a shameful being. Like,
Yeah.
the male side of your story, like being attracted to women, feeling the sexual response in your biology, and yes, we can learn to control all that and not be animalistic about it, particularly as males, but it's not wrong. It's not shameful. It's not bad. It's everything you were created to be. It is, other than survival and eating, it is the number one thing that drives us as human beings is physical and emotional attraction to one another.
Well,
And if
I think
we
there's sorry. I was just gonna
go
say I
ahead.
think they've muddied up the difference between lust and attraction.
Yeah,
And people don't know the difference. They think any type of natural attraction to someone, whether it's physical or like, and that's the thing, like you can be physically attracted to someone and
right,
not sexualize them. Like there's a
right.
difference, but the evangelical church in general like conflates the two.
I think it's ridiculous. You should be able to say to somebody in a non-cringy way when you have a relationship enough to just say, yes, you're a very attractive person. And
Mhm.
without that being, and I know we're in a weird season of history, but I think it's the shame base underneath all of this culturally, and
Mhm.
that cultural influence is the Christian influence that makes it all become cringy and become uh, ugly, because when I see, excuse me, and this, I may be totally off on this, but I kind of always go on the Mike Pence rant and the, don't meet with women. It just makes me say, okay, there's something hidden inside there that you can't tell the rest of us because you're in that community. And I just want to say, don't be ashamed, Mike. Being attracted to women that aren't your wife is not a sin. It is
Right.
natural. When you start to do things with that emotionally and otherwise, that's when it can become something that's unhealthy. But I just would love, above all else, to be able to go back and am doing this work with myself, of saying, you don't deserve to be ashamed. This is, your life is not something to be ashamed about. Your desires are not something to be ashamed about. And young little April dreaming about having intimacy with a guy and being married, and maybe even intimacy with a girl, is nothing to be ashamed about. It is natural. And then once we take the shame off of it, we can have conversations about how to handle it in a really healthy manner that keeps the child safe and keeps them pointed toward goals, and a whole lot of other things that the shame of it all meant. I've got to keep all of this hidden all the time. And so it's going to pop out in really unhealthy ways
Yeah.
all the way into marriage and beyond.
Well, so much of like evangelical youth group is suppression. Right? It's like
Right.
anything that you're struggling with, suppress, suppress, suppress. It's never handling it in a healthy way. It's not go to therapy. It's just pray harder, like give it to God. Just read your Bible more, come to church more. There's never any tangible things that actually can help you. And it's not even the thing may not even need to be dealt with. It's just there's so much shame in anything that's not quote unquote, with the exception of watching porn. I feel like that sin they talked about a lot in youth group, especially, you know, in the guys circles, from what I heard. Um, like
Oh, it's
any
the only thing you can talk about.
every man's struggle. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's the only thing you could struggle with. And then like that was literally the only marital problem I was ever warned about. Like thinking about getting married, or when I thought about getting married, I just assumed that whoever I married, that my husband would have a porn addiction,
Yeah.
because all men do. Like I was taught that too. Like it's, and I think that's like such a harmful. Not only is purity culture harmful for like women, like me being taught that men are going to sexualize me, but it's also harmful for guys because they're taught that women are to be sexualized. And so
Yeah.
then you also have men that don't know how to have relationships with women when they come out of that, because we've all just been taught that, oh, everyone's just hypersexual and sex is bad. And so we're all just suppressed teens. And whoever thought of the youth group lock-in
Ugh.
was all these sexually suppressed teenagers in a group overnight. That's probably where all these people had their sexual awakening.
Yes. Well, and because for many of us, as is the case with me, my parents never had any talk about sex with me. The only
Mm,
place I could learn it was at church camp,
right.
as we're sleeping in the dorms at church camp, or reading it. But here's a question that may be a little awkward for you: is porn always a sin?
Whew. Well, I don't think of sin. I have a different understanding of sin now. Like for me,
Good
sin
call.
is something that harms other people. Like if it is harmful to someone, if you do something that harms someone else, like I would consider that, quote unquote sinful.
Right.
Um, oh man, this is a toughie. I don't know, because there's also like sex workers, right? And there's
Right.
women who choose to do that and choose to like that's their job. That's how they make their money and they feel empowered in that. And I I don't know. I do think there are instances, like especially like trafficked. No, like if
Yeah.
women are forced to do it in any way, um, I don't know. I haven't fully deconstructed this one, Paul. You put me on the spot.
You're still working on your porn deconstruction.
Yeah.
Very, very good. I you know, and again, I think it's like drugs in a lot of ways. If we de-shamify them and in some ways decriminalize it, I think we would take away the power of those criminal elements that do human trafficking to get women into porn. And
Mhm.
instead, and I've heard this, like in Amsterdam, that is known for its brothels and all these things. It's much more women who choose to do this as a career.
Mhm.
And now we have, what is it, fans only and all those things, like
Only fans.
only. See, I'm such a pure guy, I don't even know the name of it. So isn't that amazing?
Mhm.
That women are saying, I can be empowered and make money through, suggestively using my body and being able to make that choice for myself. And in some ways, and again, being in therapy, that my therapist says sometimes, particularly when people are battling with issues that they can't communicate to others because of shame or whatever else, sometimes pornography is an outlet of exploration,
Mm.
particularly for people that are maybe not sure, they have gender or sexuality issues going on inside that they have no outlet to explore. Sometimes pornography can be helpful to that. So I say yes, if women are being sexualized, forced into pornography by human trafficking, absolutely, we
Well, and
have
a
to
lot of
be really
porn in
careful on that.
general, someone said earlier, I don't know where it went, is Aubrey said it, is very misogynistic
Yes.
and paints unrealistic expectations on partners and can be very harmful. But I don't think it's a black and white issue
Yeah.
by any
It,
means.
and some of it is like men having a way to control women. They're
Right.
really afraid of women.
Consent is the key word. Like if
Yeah.
it's ethically done, who am I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know. I've said I don't know like 5 times in a row, so.
Well, Shelby says, I made sick money selling photos of my feet. I never felt like I was sinning. Wow, Shelby, that's awesome. But I've never understood that. But hey,
Can
I'm
I
glad
can
you.
I tell a kind of embarrassing story
Sure, if
that's
you like.
related?
Absolutely.
Related. So I got on Cameo, which is this app that people can pay to, like, you can do a like a 60-second video for them, like shout outs, happy birthday, stuff like that. I don't charge much. I charge $10. And
Okay.
and like Cameo gets a cut, and I've only done a handful. I haven't done a ton. I don't advertise it a lot. But a few weeks ago, I got a request from a guy who I like offered to do my different characters, and so he asked for the unrelatable Christian mom to talk to him and say that if he doesn't stop sinning, that he's going to get a spanking on the bottom, because that's what bad boys do, and la da 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 da. And I read this and I was like it felt weird, but I wasn't quite sure. So I even gave him the benefit of the doubt, and I sent him a message. I was like, hey, is this supposed to be addressed to anyone? And he was like, yeah, no, it's to me. And he was like, and if you could please call me like a really bad boy and like talk down to me, like that'd be really great too. And so I showed Beecher, my spouse, and they were like, do not do this, April. I was like, you think this is sexual, right? They're like, yes, this is definitely sexual. If you were to do this, I would never let you live it down. So I denied it, but I just would like to let the record show, like, if I were to do something like that, I would charge more than $10.
I started to say, maybe you
That
up the price on that one.
like that cheap. No, that was such a cheap way to try to get a anyway. Just wanted to
By
share
the
that
way,
little
Shelby, I
tidbit.
am sorry if I outed you. You put it in the comments, and somebody was saying I outed Shelby on the podcast there, so I'm sorry about that. And Shelby does say that you're worth way more than $10.
Yes, thank you. Honestly, I would sell feet pictures. Like that to me, like that doesn't feel weird. If you can make money for that, why not?
And like Heidi is saying in the comments, yes, I think evangelicals are probably the top clientele for those things. So
For SM and fetishes. No, seriously though, I've literally heard from people that were like so sexually repressed that they almost wanted to be assaulted, because then it wouldn't be a sin because they didn't choose it.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. The one other thing I would tell my evangelical self is, Paul, you can officiate gay weddings. You can officiate same-gendered weddings. It's okay. God is pleased in the day. Because I was always a very accepting pastor. I always was welcoming to gay LGBTQIA plus people, but I still, probably for self-protection, but also a little bit like I wasn't totally sure theologically, and I never turned anybody down. I was never asked, but I would have turned somebody down to officiate a same-gendered wedding. And so I'm glad I was never asked. And in many ways, looking back now, and we had talked about side B Christians in terms of gender and sexuality, I did hurt people. My wife and I both hurt friends with our side B stance because they saw us as affirming, but we were really just accepting, but not affirming. And we did really hurt people. So I would love to go back and talk to that evangelical self and say, Paul, you're going to hurt people with this, and there's no reason theologically or in the way Jesus interacted with people to hold these beliefs.
Yeah, there would definitely be some little nuggets I would want to give my former evangelical self. And I think the biggest one would be to warn her that your brother's gay, so stop being homophobic. Yeah.
Would you tell yourself to vote for Barack? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt that. That was
No. Would I tell myself to vote for Obama?
Vote for Barack.
Probably. I mean, I don't know though, because now I've got this wonderful Mitt Romney video that I campaigned for, so
Nice.
that I can show all the people that don't believe I was ever conservative, like Exhibit A.
My wife and I are watching the show First Ladies. I don't know if you've had a chance to see that. It's a show about Michelle Obama and Eleanor Roosevelt and Betty Ford, and and they're dramatic, and I'm sure they're embellishing. But when you think about the Christian hatred of Barack Obama by right-wing Christians. And then you see, and again, it may be idealized, it may not be the whole truth, but you see the relationship displayed between President Obama and First Lady Obama, and we ought to be ashamed. I don't know why there's not a move in the church to say we really do need to repent of how we treated the Obamas in office.
Oh, yeah. I definitely wish I could have enjoyed his presidency instead of crying both times that he won. I was so indoctrinated. I literally thought that America was going to be socialist overnight. And like, I didn't even understand really what socialism was. I just knew it was bad. so stupid.
And Barack Hussein wanted to do it to us.
I know. I feel so bad. There were so many people I offended back then. I don't even remember who they were, but I wish I could just give a blanket apology just across the board. Like, I'm so sorry for the things I said when I was Republican. I knew not what I did.
Yeah. Father, forgive our old evangelical selves. We
knew not what we were doing. Yeah.
All right, let's hit our mid-roll break, and we can come back and talk about cringy church camp stories. And we want to hear from all of you. You guys have been great additions to the show tonight, but if you're in the comments, tell us your cringy church camp story in as few words as you can, and we'll share those next here on the Evangelicalish podcast.
Loving Evangelicalish? Follow us to catch all the latest content and encouragement. You can check us out on TikTok by following @Evangelicalish, or subscribe on YouTube by searching Evangelicalish. That's Evangelical with an ISH. And don't forget to catch our live streams each and every single Wednesday night on YouTube at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, and 6 Pacific. And now, back to the Evangelicalish podcast.
Jeremy made it with the mid-roll.
Yes,
his voice made it in the episode.
If you're just joining us, Jeremy has a sick child tonight and had literally at the last minute had to drop out of the show. So he's not here with us tonight. We do want to tell people this week are going to have a new website. Woohoo! In fact, you can go see it right now. It's not really hidden at evangelicalish.com. But our new
work
website,
in progress. Yes,
it is a work in progress. So excuse our dust, but it's going to be there. And there's going to be an opportunity where each season we're going to sort of step out of doing a show one week and do an interactive Zoom room opportunity with people that are members on our site. We haven't figured out what the name of those members would be yet or anything, but just know that this is coming, and probably this week. We just have to get some of the banking information kind of straightened out. But evangelicalish.com is coming, and it's going to be fun, and it's going to give you an opportunity to be a little more interactive with us. We get to chat about that. I don't know. Do we talk about the event yet?
Well, I think we just say we are hoping and planning to come to Nashville sometime in the fall, and we think we have a venue, but we have to figure out dates and what exactly it's going to be. We'll probably do a live show out there and actually see people in person. So that'll be cool, but that's TBD because we're still finalizing that.
Yeah. But if you can, be thinking mid-September to late September, could you make a jaunt to Nashville? And there's Jenny, by the way, who is helping us find a location. Jenny, you are a thank you. And so we think we have a pretty cool location that we're going to be very excited about. So just be thinking mid to late September, could you make a trip to Nashville to hang out with the Evangelicalish crew?
Yes. Okay. So now we're going to talk about church camp. It's summer. You know, if we were still evangelical, maybe my kid would have gone to church camp. So to kick us off, though, do you have that video?
Yeah.
So I did a church camp video, which is a POV, a point of view. So the text on this says, point of view, you are a girl at kids' church camp. So this is what a camp counselor is saying to you.
Girls, thank you so much. You've done a great job honoring our church camp modesty policy, except for Sarah, who's got to wear a large sweatshirt and jeans in 100-degree weather for the rest of camp because I caught her in a tank top. Too much skin leads to sin. Remember that. Remember that, everybody. I do need to talk to you girls though. We've got to take modesty to the next level. And one thing that a bunch of the guy counselors have brought to my attention is that you guys are hugging the other boys at this camp. And I get it, but some of you girls have developed boobs. And so we're going to do an exercise. Everyone stand up. We're going to take turns hugging each other from behind. So this is what a boy feels. You feel that on your back? Boobs. Every time you frontal hug a boy, they feel your boobs. They think of your boobs. You are causing them to stumble with a hug. Girls, thank you so much. You did a great job.
That was a real exercise that I had to go through as a child. I was hugging my girlfriends from behind. And honestly, though, I did not. I developed very late, so they felt nothing. So they probably were like, oh, they don't feel anything. They're probably fine to hug. When my friend had developed and I felt hers, I was like, oh, no, that's what they feel. I can never hug a boy again. Oh, the shame.
Oh, my gosh. That's crazy. So certainly as a guy, we never had to do that.
They focus so much on modesty on like the girls' side. I feel like the girls would get this like really serious talk about like protecting the boys, and the boys were like playing kickball or something, like dodgeball. Like they didn't care. Stupid.
So did this at your church camp? Did they say girls will be swimming from noon to 1, and boys will be swimming from 1:30 to 2:30? And they had to have the girls swim first because who knew what the boys would leave behind in the pool for the girls if the boys went first. So,
oh my gosh.
But
so
we could not have co-ed swimming in the pool.
We called it mixed bathing.
Nice.
I don't know. I guess no one else used that term, but we were actually progressive because we did bathe with the boys. But the boys could just wear their normal swim trunks, no shirt, topless. Girls had to wear a one-piece bathing suit and a t-shirt on top of that, like a long t-shirt. It couldn't be a short t-shirt. So I was wearing a one-piece shirt. And honestly, though, like there was one camp where they said one pieces would be fine, but I had really long legs. And so a one piece on me still looked scandalous, I guess. I mean, I was a teenager, and they came up to me and they're like, you have to wear a t-shirt over that, because they didn't really give me a reason. They just said, you have to wear a t-shirt over that. Like some of the girls weren't wearing t-shirts. I had to wear a t-shirt though, because I had long legs. And that was like
how did the t-shirt help that you had long legs? Was it like
it was a longer t-shirt? So it just like mainly covered up my like upper thighs pretty much. Because that,
so
I
not
guess
only a t-shirt, but like a guy's t-shirt to be super long.
It was so dumb. I guess covered my shoulders. I don't know. It was like the thorn in my side though was because I had long legs. Finding shorts for summer camp was the bane of my existence, because they like my arms are also incredibly long. So finding shorts that went below my fingertips, I basically I had to wear pants in the heat of summer at times because I couldn't like they wouldn't let me wear shorts because they looked too short on me. It's like I can't help it that I'm tall.
Well, we had, did you have the no PDA rules at camp?
Oh yeah.
They would just hit us with no PDA, no PDA, no, which stands for public display of affection, if you don't know. And oh my gosh, we were, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old children that were nothing but raging hormones. And I despised church camp every year. My parents pawned me off on this shit every year. But then you get there and you're angry about being there, and then you realize there are girls from all over the state that are there, and you're cramped together with your little hormonal bodies in these little bitty spaces for a week, sleeping overnight. And so PDA happened, and it happened a lot, and everybody was pairing up, and you had to find your partner for the week. And so some of the boys,
I always wanted the PDA to happen. It never happened to me at church camp, but it was probably because I was wearing like a trash bag the entire time, like completely covered.
They ruined
That's
your
so
chance for
sad.
PDA.
Ruined it.
Oh
Well,
my
one year I was 18, so I'd like technically like just graduated. So I was like in the weird between like still in youth group, but almost a leader, like in transition. And I had a boyfriend that year. So there was PDA, but it was like pre-existing.
Well, and then with us, and then you'd always at the end of camp, you're like, "I'll write to you every week," because we were old. We were before email or all and cell phones and all that stuff.
Mm,
And then you never talk to the person ever again.
never.
But so we had an incident with PDA with some couples had snuck off and made out, and so that meant we had to have the talks, and we all got sit down, and so our dorm guy was one of those, hey, I'm going to be super cool and hip like all of you guys, counselor guys, you know?
Mm.
And so he starts talking to us about the danger of PDA, and it became like, this is one of the cringiest things I've ever sat through in my life.
Oh my
And he
God.
starts talking and he points at me and he says, like, Paul, you're hanging out with Andrea there, and she's got a bod. We all know she's got a bod. There's
Oh
no
my
doubt about it.
gosh.
And you're and it was just it was like, why do I get the feeling that you are too intensely studying what we're doing here? So that was probably the cringiest camp moment I ever had.
Well, the guys would just like tell on themselves because it would always be like, the boy counselors have brought it to our attention, or the male pastors have told us that you girls need to cover up. It's like, ugh, yikes. Okay, also this incident did not happen at camp. This happened at my kids' church. Actually, I made a TikTok about this last week. I was 12 to paint the picture. I was fully covered here because this was just that church. It was like a special kids' church event. And there was another guy there who was 14. So he's like a couple years older than me. So he was already in youth group and I was about to graduate into youth group. So I was like leaving kids' church, going into youth group. But we were friends, and me and another girl were just like hanging out with him. And we were just having a lot of fun. Like we were laughing and we were running around and we were throwing candy at each other. And it was just like innocent childhood fun. And I did like him and he liked me, but it was just innocent fun. Like we weren't doing anything wrong. And then afterwards, the youth pastor, who was about to be my youth pastor, pulled me aside and was like, hey, April, I know you're having a lot of fun with, I won't say his name. It's like, but you know, we really want him to be a youth leader. Like we're training him up and you're really distracting him.
Oh
And
my goodness.
it's like, I don't want you to break his heart because he's going to be like a man of God and he's going to be a leader. And you really need to leave him alone. And like, I was 12 and the shame that I felt because I literally could not figure out what I had done wrong. But I suddenly felt so guilty because I realized, oh my gosh, my sin nature is causing this boy who I like I'm keeping him from, doing God's will or whatever. And I was 12 and that wasn't even like I was getting in trouble for just existing as a female.
Two other terms I would like to throw out is sin nature and man of God. It's just so creepy. Yes, I see this apology in the comments. And April, I apologize for all the ignorant men who have run Christianity for all these years. We are stupid fucking idiots.
Well, I appreciate that. That was
such
a
a
good
Jezebel
apology.
spirit.
I wish that youth pastor, which for the record, this guy was just problematic in general. I've had other instances, like when my dad was diagnosed with cancer, this same youth pastor reached out to me and was like, I know how to heal your dad of cancer, but you need to meet with me and I can give you the special formula and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oof. No thanks, because he was already just a little weird anyway. And then like later he kind of like blamed me that because I didn't have lunch with him, that's why insinuated that's why my dad was not healed of cancer. Because he had the formula to be healed, which anyway, this is supposed to be a fun conversation.
I know, this is killing me. I keep asking the question, like, do Christians ever listen to what comes out of their mouth? I mean, do they ever stop and think about what they're saying, because I don't think they do. I don't think they ever stop to think how utterly ignorant this sounds.
Yeah.
It's like the
I
other
don't
day
know.
I was just asking about, the idea that God would create an omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent God would create a soul that he knew, that patriarchal evangelical God knew he was creating a soul that was going to burn for all of eternity. I mean, in the evangelical belief system, God already knows the end from the beginning. And so he's creating a soul saying, yes, this soul is going to end up burning for eternity, but I'm going to create it anyway. Or even this soul is going to be raped on earth or murdered on earth or something else. And I was asking a question about that. And Christians are saying things like, well, a good father disciplines their son. And I'm like, I don't know a single good father that has ever set their child on fire, much
Right.
less on fire for eternity.
But also when you do discipline, the goal is to like rehabilitate. Like you
Restoration.
discipline, restoration, to then like make them so that they don't do whatever the mistake was again. But hell, there's no restoration there. Like the way that the evangelical church preaches it anyway. It's just you're there, you're burning, and you burn and you burn and you burn and you burn, and that's it forever.
Yeah. 16-year-old boy gets a hug from a girl and then gets hit by a truck later that night. Bummer. In hell for eternity because you felt that girl's boobs. Tough break.
I know. Or her, because she let because the guy felt her boobs in a hug and she caused them to stumble.
That's right. It was her fault.
I know. It's always the woman's fault. It was Eve's fault. And the whole reason we have sin. This comment, Wes says, my theory is because of indoctrination that they don't know how to evaluate what they're saying and just talk on autopilot.
Yeah.
I was talking to Beecher the other day. We were I don't even know how the conversation came up, but I remembered when I was evangelical, I went and saw the movie, this Legally Blonde 2, the second one. I don't know if you've seen it, but they have
I have not.
It's so old now at this point, but I remember it. The only thing I remember about the movie is there was this side story that her dog was gay. And then at the very end, like it's like a one sentence joke that like, oh, I think my dog's gay or something. And then at the end, they show the dog with the male dog with another male dog, and they're like, oh, they are gay. And then they like celebrate it. They're like, yeah, homosexuality is in nature. I don't know what they said, but like that was the gist of it. I was so triggered by that I remember like going home and like looking up like, is homosexuality really in nature? Because like one of my biggest like talking points was that it's unnatural, like it's not natural. And then like I found instances of homosexuality in nature, like in different animals. And I remember I was just like, just shut it down. I just closed my computers. Like I can't, I literally couldn't process it. I never thought about it again. I tucked that away until I randomly thought about it the other day. It's just so like there were definitely instances along the way of facts and truth that went against what I believed that I just couldn't handle. So I just chose to ignore it.
Oh my gosh. It's so that indoctrination of, well, the Bible said it, therefore it is, and all that stuff just was so overpowering in a lot of ways. But yes, like learning that the rapture is not really in the Bible. One verse in Thessalonians, we maybe be able to say, well, that could be, but hearing other Christians, that's not the preponderance of belief and has never been the preponderance of belief in the church. I just had to go like, yeah, no, it's got to be true because we teach it in our church every single day. And a big one for us was once saved, always saved. You can, we believed in backsliding, and those Baptists believed in once saved, always saved. And, when somebody starts to say, well, yeah, that's kind of what the Bible says. And you start to look, then you're right. You have to shut down your brain and start to say, well, I'm just going to agree with the community narrative because that's how I'm going to survive. Or particularly like when people start saying, Noah's Ark, there's no way that's possible. It's like, How could they possibly have had 2 of every animal on earth in the ark for 40 days? It is not possible.
Also, just like the mixing of salt water and fresh water, and
Yeah.
like the fish that would not have survived that from like, well, I can't remember what the word is with the, but yeah, no, there's so many things. There are literally so
Yeah.
many things, and there's so many contradictions. Like they're not major, but there are small contradictions in the Bible where one passage says someone's name or some place, and a different passage says another. And you can, talk about, oh, well, they probably just meant this or meant that or blah, 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 blah. But either way, it's an error. One of them is wrong. So it's like the whole idea that it's an errant. Ugh.
And that it starts out Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 are 2 different creation stories that do not agree with one another. So the contradiction starts right away in that sucker there. So yeah, those are all things that made me for many years say, well, we'll just ignore that because we're so good. And my story always is, then I begin to start to think we're really not very good. And then President Obama got elected. I'm like, we're really, really not good. We are like horrible people. And then Trump was the killing blow of it all.
The catalyst. So. Yeah. Have we talked about Trump before on here?
Yeah. Yeah. And that we now, not like we didn't know it already, but now have sort of incontrovertible evidence that Trump followed the advice of nutballs around him rather than serious professional people, and knew for a fact that he lost the 2020 election and still wanted to try to overthrow the government. And Christians would still say they believe in him, and will vote for him again.
There's so much, and
lost.
like, it's so incriminating, all the stuff that's coming out, but they're not watching it. Our neighbors across the street last week put a Trump 2024 flag in the front of their house.
Same, right across the street.
And I'm like Beecher and I've spent way too much time trying to figure this out, because they had nothing during the 2016 election or the 2020 election. No evidence at all. I mean, I could assume they were Trump supporters, just, they fit the stereotype, but like, I didn't know. But like now in 2022, like, he hasn't even announced he's running. He's being like, now, like, why are they throwing in the support now? It's so weird. And
it is crazy. And just when I see, I even put up a Lauren Boebert clip today, and why is it? And I try to be not misogynistic, but it just seems like Republicans are putting, well, there's Herschel Walker too. They're just putting up so many stupid people. Like, we can disagree, and I can be offended because you're trying to put your religious beliefs into politics, but doing it with really dumb people, come on.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you followed much of Herschel Walker in Georgia, but that is not a smart person. And
I've followed it very loosely, so I don't know a ton. I think I've tried to take like a little bit of a mental break from it all, because it's so infuriating. Like, every single thing that, like, these people have platforms, but honestly though, the stuff that they're spewing is such deep conspiracies and stuff that does not make sense. Like, I almost feel like you have to not be all there, maybe. But there's also really smart people that have fallen for a lot of these conspiracies too. So it's just this weird conundrum that our society has fallen in.
It actually is really dangerous if we say only stupid people fall for this, or only people with mental health issues. It actually is very much not that. Really intelligent, sane people, if I can use that term, and that's not probably the right term I could pull, but are duped by this. It is a mass pulling of wool over the eyes. It is a mob that is all pulling each other in this direction, and people are falling for it because it is an echo chamber. You are hearing it in your church, you're hearing it in your media, and now it's getting to a place where you only have friends that believe this and talk about it. And so it becomes the ultimate echo chamber.
Well, and then the mental gymnastics that your mind has to do when confronted with facts. Like, I don't know if you watch Jordan Klepper when he goes
I
to
love
these
Jordan
Trump
Klepper.
rallies. So
Brilliant.
he was at one in Mississippi a couple weeks ago, and we were actually in the same town when this Trump rally was there. It was a weird coincidence. But he was asking people about the big lie and if they believe the election was stolen. And of course, all these people were like, yes, it was definitely stolen. There's proof, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, well, did you know, Attorney General Bill Barr said that it was not stolen and that there was no evidence. And they're like, didn't really say anything. And they're like, oh, well, I don't really trust him. He's not really in the inner circle. And so then he was like, well, what about like, so who would you trust? Like the Trumps? And he's like, yeah, like Donald Trump or Ivanka. And he's like, well, here's Ivanka saying she agrees with Bill Barr that it was not stolen. And literally one of the people was like, that's a clone.
That's a clone.
That's not really Ivanka. It's like,
yes.
What do you do?
And I have all kinds of people like 2,000 mules. I watched 2,000 mules. It's idiotic. Like you have to want to be duped to believe 2,000 mules. I mean, it is. I almost
think that
like
movie?
Dinesh D'Souza, the criminal that was pardoned by Trump. I really almost think it was like Dinesh D'Souza saying, I'm going to make this as a joke and put it out there as a funny joke. And everybody's like, ooh, he really brought the receipts, didn't he? And it's idiotic. It's 2 hours of my life I'll never get back. Bill Barr laughed when asked if 2,000 mules, proved there was fraud. And so it just truly is a mass hysteria, a mass echo chamber that Tucker Carlson says it and Christians repeat it dutifully. And the real danger is he's giving people a way to give themselves a pass from being introspective. When Tucker Carlson says the shooting on the 4th of July was because of, women browbeating men with political correctness, he is giving his minions a permission to not be introspective. And that's when things get really dangerous. I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on. You ought to be questioning things all the time and give yourself a space to, I went and researched Hunter Biden, and because I don't want to just be dismissing something that the other side is using as a distraction tool. And I think the guy has real problems. But that doesn't dismiss the fact that every time something bad happens for Trump in the January 6th commission, you start seeing Hunter Biden's name pop up on Twitter.
Right.
It's thought through. It's planned. This is how we distract our minions from being introspective. And I think the Bible commands us to be introspective.
I think the biggest pushback that I see when all these people are talking about Trump, like they're like, why are you still talking about Trump? It's 2022 and like, what about Biden? Like Biden's awful. Biden's got dementia or whatever they say about Biden. But like, I'm not a Biden stan. Like I voted for him.
Joe Biden.
No, I don't have a Biden hat or a Biden flag. I took my Biden sign down literally as soon as the election was over because I'm not a weirdo. I don't have to keep it up. Like it's not a cult personality. I think Biden could do a lot of things better. There's things that he's done that I don't agree with. But I would choose him again over Trump, who incited an insurrection. Like there's no comparison.
Incited an insurrection because really dumb people around him convinced him to do it. Like really dumb people, like Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, like really dumb people. And I had somebody the other day, are you happy you voted for Joe Biden? And I said, oh, I didn't vote for Joe Biden. I voted against Donald Trump. There was nothing in me that wanted to vote Joe Biden for president, but I had two choices. And I used to always say, I didn't vote for Hillary or Donnie in 2016 because I've always had this, well, I'm going to vote for somebody, not against somebody. And 2020 was the first time of I hate my choice, but I have no choice. I have to vote against this horrible person.
I was the same way in 2016. Like I still hadn't fully deconstructed that you could vote for a Democrat because I was always taught that Democrats were just evil. So I voted third party in 2016, and then literally all of the next 4 years, I regretted it. I was like, I should have, because I think a lot of people did that because they just assumed Hillary would win. I assumed Hillary would win, and if someone were to put like a gun to my head and be like, "Who would you rather have between Hillary and Trump?" I would have said Hillary. And like literally, like that's the point of voting. It's who would you rather have between the two. So I learned my lesson. I voted for Joe Biden.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like Christians a lot, again, finding ways to keep from being introspective will say, did you know the KKK was founded by the Democratic Party? Did you know that? And I'm like, yes.
Mhm.
And so which is worse, the party that was racist in the
Oh,
19th century or the one that is racist in the 21st century? Which
right.
is worse? There's no question George Wallace and Orval Faubus and Bull Connor, and I'll let you guys look up those historical figures, would be Republican today and proudly Republican and staunch Trump supporters. And there is nothing pure, nothing holy about having that in our churches. And
Right.
so anyway, yeah, that's in the end, the mass blindness and the mass echo chamber that is driving right-wing Christianity now is very scary and really is a threat. So the good news is, I think, for everybody is sometimes cultures need to be overturned for the new thing and the good thing to come into a season. And somehow I just kind of feel like right-wing evangelicalism, those people that we were,
Yeah.
April, may be irredeemable at this point. And so maybe there needs to be some disruption in our culture so that something can die and something new come. And so that's my hope for the season. And particularly when I see millennials and Gen Zers really moving in another direction, I'm like, well, there's hope for the future. Maybe not for my generation, but there is hope for the future. And if evangelical April and evangelical Paul can learn, maybe there are a few other Nicodemuses that can.
No, I agree. And I agree with Barrett in the comments that we need ranked choice voting so we don't get another Trump situation. 1000%.
It would give opportunities. And we have what's called jungle primaries in California. So it's the top two of all candidates. You can vote for anybody in any party in the primary, and the top two are going to go to the general. And it gives space for third parties and new parties to rise up, and anything that can get us out of this horrible two-party system, I think is vital for the future of the country.
Yes. No, I agree. Yeah, well, we should
We didn't
probably
really mean to
go.
get political on this, did we?
I mean, just look at the country. Like, I don't know how we don't get political. Like, they literally their faith. Like, you can't talk evangelical without talking politics because it's so intertwined. Christian nationalism is somehow getting bigger. Like, there's people now embracing the term Christian nationalism and wearing it like
Yeah.
a badge of honor. Like, they're not shying away from it anymore. So you can't. You just can't talk about it without talking about the other. That's a sad place to be. It should be separate, but that's just the reality of this nation.
Yeah, they've covertly been sort of planning to take over the Supreme Court and the legislatures, and now, and their plan worked to a charm. They used racism and abortion to manipulate Christian voters into voting this way, and it's worked like a charm. And so now people, again, like Lauren Boebert, are saying it out loud. We want the church to take over the government. We want to be a theocracy. And the funny thing is, the church has always said, oh no, the Muslims are going to come in and put Sharia law in place. And it's the evangelical church that's doing it. Isn't that crazy?
I know. Well, the funny thing too is growing up, I was always taught like the big boogeyman, the big bad was socialism and Democrats and atheists and Satanists and, Muslims. That's what the evangelical church teaches,
Sure.
foreign terrorism, that these were going to be the things. Communism, that was going to be the downfall of democracy. The biggest plot twist in my life was realizing that, oh shit, nope, it's white evangelicals. Freaking
It's
Christian
me.
nationalists. Yeah, looking in the mirror, like I was part of the problem the entire time. Like that's a hard pill to swallow, but hopefully more people will swallow that pill. And also give
Yeah.
yourself grace too, because so many people don't get out. Like that's something that I've been trying to like. I feel like I'm constantly, especially now since Roe v. Wade's been overturned, like I'm constantly going back and forth between feeling guilty for the part that I may have played in the pro-life movement, and then also giving myself grace that thank God, like I can see the problems now, and I've seen it for a few years now. It's like constantly grace and guilt, grace and guilt.
Yeah. Yeah. It took a while for me to realize how manipulated I was by right-wing media and by Christian media, which they're the same thing now. They just use a different name. And I mean, I'm losing my grace for evangelical people now. And my wife keeps telling me like, what's the grace? But you need to hear, guys, that this is bad. We have become an existential threat to the country, and the gospel has disappeared from our grid of what we do. We are now just a political movement, and it's not good. And we're going to see more and more of these stories of 10-year-old rape victims, SA victims, having to go across state lines. And now Texas is going to pass a law saying it's illegal to go to another state to get reproductive care. I mean, we are turning into everything we ever said we despised.
Yeah, that's true.
On that note,
tune in next week for Evangelicalish. Next week we're going to have
your kids to church camp nor VBS. This oh my God, did I hate VBS?
That's another episode. Next week we're going to have a really awesome guest. Her name is Janice, and she is at God Has Not Given on Instagram. She is an ex-evangelical and was at Hillsong. She was actually one of the featured people interviewed in the Hillsong documentary because she was part of Hillsong New York. So she's got some Carl Lentz information.
Nice.
So we're going to talk with her next week, and it's going to be, I'm really excited. It's going to be an awesome show. So tune in next week. If you want to do the live, we'll be here 9 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, or you can catch the podcast later. So we hope you guys have a wonderful week. Anything else you want to say, Paul?
Well done, April. We made it without Jeremy, but hopefully we'll have Jeremy back next week.
Yes. All right. You guys have a wonderful week. God bless.
Good night, everybody.